Let's start at the beginning. Have any of the things that the 9/11 Commission, of which you were on, been adopted since you made these recommendations?
Interestingly enough, a large number of our recommendations were adopted. A number of structural changes were made in our intelligence services, and a Director of National Intelligence Office was created. The problem in this case is that while the recommendations were adopted formally, they don't seem to have been carried out in the actual way in which intelligence is shared. The greatest defect prior to 9/11, in our view, was that various agencies kept information to themselves and didn't share it. This is another case in which there had been a proper sharing of information. That individual would never have been allowed aboard the plane.
And your recommendations were that this is exactly the kind of information that should be shared.
You know, I don't think this is because people are bad people by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just the sand in the gears of the bureaucracy. And people who have been working there for a long time find it difficult to change the way in which they operate. Intelligence has always been closely held in the past. It needs to be shared in the future. And in this case, clearly it was not. I must say, I don't think there's been enough urgency expressed by the Obama administration itself. You know, it's refused to say that we're in a war, which we are, against a form of Islamic extremism that manifests itself in terrorism. I think personally that it's a mistake to treat these simply as criminal matters. Remember, there was an attempt to blow up the World Trade Center several years before 9/11 itself. We caught the people. We tried them. We put them in jail. And then we got 9/11 as a result. They regarded that as a triumph. I'm sure the al-Qaeda people who inspired this young man regard this one as a triumph. It's discombobulated the United States. It's inconvenienced everyone who climbs on an airplane. We simply have to do better. We simply have to recognize that we're at war, and we have to have a bureaucracy which is willing to share information on a timely basis.
Do you think that this latest incident will help shake some of the sand from the gears?
Well, it certainly ought to. We have a situation now in which this isn't completely the fault of this administration, this failure to share. This obviously has been a failure that preceded 9/11 itself, and unfortunately it's kept going after 9/11. We even had our Secretary of Homeland Security, right after this incident was over, say that the system worked the way it ought to work. Well, that kind of attitude at the top is not going to lead to a sense of urgency among the people who work in the field.
What about the politicization of the effort to protect this country?
People are going to criticize any administration that makes any kind of mistake, and in a free society, that's a good thing. The only way that's not going to happen, of course, is if there's some kind of censorship or another. But it can be destructive as well. The criticism in this case ought to lead to better policies. And if it does, because no one ended up getting killed in this connection, this could be a very, very significant wake-up call. I hope it is. But I think from the President down through the Secretary of Homeland Security, through the people who are working in the field, this should shake up attitudes. This should have people look at all of these challenges differently. I've just been away on a trip with my wife, who's in her upper 70s and has a new hip. She is examined very, very carefully every time she goes through security. And yet people like this were given just the most superficial examination and waved on through.
I remember interviewing you not long after the 9/11 Commission made your recommendations. And at the time, I think much of the country seemed to believe that those recommendations would be followed pretty quickly. Are you surprised that we are still having these conversations about things that you said we needed to do all these years later?
let's divide the question. Congress probably did more to adopt the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission than it has any other outside commission in 50 or 60 years. However, getting those new policies actually implemented by the thousands of people who are charged with doing so has been a very, very difficult task. And the answer to your question is, I am very surprised that we're having this conversation right now. This kind of intelligence ought to have been shared. This probably wasn't a huge plot coming down all the way from the top. It wasn't the most difficult thing to find out about by any stretch of the imaginations. And so it's a crashing disappointment to find this failure.
If you had the president's ear right now, what would you tell him? What are the things that he needs to do today to begin fixing this problem?
The president has the biggest and most effective microphone in the entire world. I think the president has got to treat these national security challenges, this very real war against extremist terrorism, as a war and as a very, very high priority, and he has to speak about it. He has to speak out far more sharply and far more eloquently than he has in the past. He is the leader. His administration will follow his lead. If this is very important to him, it will become important to his administration.